I thought it was just another morning working on my cabin. But when I walked outside, something felt wrong. Bright orange papers were plastered all over my porch. Stop work order. Stamped, sealed, and signed by the county. Or at least that's what I thought. I stood there reading those words over and over until it hit me. This wasn't from the county. It was forged. Every line, every stamp, fake, and the person behind it? Not some random scammer. Not the government, it was my neighbor. The president of the HOA I didn't even belong to, Karen Foreman. She said she was protecting community standards. But what she was really doing was stealing everything I'd built. She thought she could take my land with a fake piece of paper. But I was about to show her you can't forge the law and get away with it. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. The morning started like any other for David Harper. He wasn't a man who asked for much. A good cup of coffee, the smell of pine outside his window, and the quiet hum of his old pickup as he drove down the gravel road to his property. That was his peace. He'd spent the last 3 years restoring an abandoned hunting lodge at the edge of a lake. The place was half ruined when he bought it. Rotted beams, leaky roof, and overgrown grass waist-high. But to David, it was a dream. Something to fix. Something his hands could bring back to life. He wasn't rich. He wasn't loud. He just worked hard. That morning, he was sanding the porch rail, humming to himself, when he saw a convoy of SUVs crawling up the dirt road, shiny, black, and completely out of place. The engines shut off. Doors opened. And out stepped Karen Wellington, the HOA president from the next subdivision over. A woman known for her manicured hair, power walk, and a clipboard that could probably cut glass. Behind her stood 3 board members, all dressed like they were attending a corporate meeting instead of stepping onto someone's private land. David wiped his hands and frowned. "This ain't HOA property," he said flatly. "You're about 2 miles off your map." Karen smiled, that tight politician smile that never touched her eyes. "Oh, we know, Mr. Harper, but your property technically borders the Lakeview Estates community line, and we've received multiple complaints about," she paused, pretending to check her notes, "unauthorized construction." David's brow furrowed. "Unauthorized? This is private land. Been in my family since 1974. I've got the deed inside if you want to read it." Karen chuckled softly, waving her clipboard. "There's no need to get defensive. We just need you to stop work until we can verify ownership boundaries." David stared at her. "You're trespassing, and you don't get to verify my land. The county already did that when I paid taxes on it last year." Her fake smile twitched. "Sir, you don't need to be rude. We're just trying to maintain community standards." He took a step closer, his voice low and steady. "I don't live in your community." That's when she dropped the first threat. "Well, maybe not yet. But if your cabin affects the lake view of any Lakeview Estates resident, then by legal right, the HOA can claim enforcement authority." David laughed in disbelief. "Legal right? That's creative. You should be a screenwriter." By noon, the argument had drawn attention. Karen's so-called team started measuring his fence line, taking photos, even tagging his trees with little orange ribbons. David told them to leave, twice. Then a third time, louder. When they didn't, he picked up his phone and called the sheriff. The deputy who showed up knew David well. He'd helped him once with a stolen generator last winter. The deputy looked around and sighed. "Karen, you and your people need to go. This isn't under HOA jurisdiction." Karen smiled again, but this time her eyes flashed cold. "Oh, it will be soon." And just like that, they left. Slow, deliberate, like they were making a promise. That night, David locked up and sat on the porch with a beer. The frogs croaked. The wind rustled through the pine trees, but the peace didn't last. The next morning, when he drove down the trail toward the road, his truck screeched to a halt across the entrance. Someone had chained a heavy steel blockade, padlocked and cemented into the ground. Tied to the center of it was a plastic sign. "Private community access. Trespassers will be reported." The HOA logo gleamed on the corner. David's jaw tightened. He got out, walked up and yanked the chain. It didn't budge. Someone had welded it overnight. He could almost hear Karen's voice in his head. "We're just maintaining community standards. It wasn't a mistake anymore. It was war. He took photos, sent them to the sheriff. Then he went into town to the county clerk's office. That's where the real shock came. When he asked to see the boundary map, the clerk frowned. "Funny," she said, flipping through the file. "This section was updated just last month. Lakeview Estates HOA submitted a revision to include part of the northern forest strip, right where your property sits." David blinked. "They can't just add that." The clerk looked uneasy. "No, they can't, but this form here has the county seal." "Looks official," David leaned in. He'd seen enough paperwork to recognize a fake. Wrong font, wrong seal position, wrong signature date. He took a photo and called his lawyer, Marlene, an old friend from his time working construction permits. She took one look and said, "David, that's forgery. Someone copied a real county document and swapped details." He felt the anger boil in his chest, not just because of the lie, but because of how confident they were that he'd just accept it. He decided right then he wouldn't. That evening, David returned home to find fresh tire tracks in his driveway. Not his, not the sheriff's. The cabin door was unlocked. His tools were scattered. And on his table, sitting in the open, was an envelope sealed with the HOA logo. He opened it. Inside was a letter, typed neatly. "Effective immediately, Lakeview Estates HOA claims joint custodial authority over the property known as Lot 7B under the Community Zoning Expansion Act. You are hereby required to cease all work until compliance approval is granted. Non-compliance will result in fines and legal action." He could almost hear Karen's smug voice narrating each word, but taped beneath the letter was something far more disturbing. A photograph. It showed David standing in front of his cabin 2 days ago, unaware. Someone had been watching him. That night, the forest didn't feel quiet anymore. Every creak, every shadow made him glance up. He kept the lights on until midnight, then finally lay down on the couch, shotgun leaning against the wall. Somewhere in the distance, an engine rumbled. Slow, faint, then gone. He didn't sleep much. At dawn, he woke to the sound of gravel crunching. He went to the window, and no cars this time. But on the porch, sitting right by his boots, was a fresh notice. Same letterhead, same fake seal. Except this time, it wasn't a stop work order, it was an eviction. David stared at it, his breath fogging the glass. And in that moment, something changed inside him. This wasn't about land anymore. It wasn't about property lines or paperwork. It was about control. They wanted him scared. They wanted him gone. But they'd underestimated the one thing they couldn't buy, bully, or forge: his resolve. That afternoon, he called the sheriff again. "Sent the forged papers?" "Sent the photo." The sheriff promised an investigation, but David knew this would take time, so he made a plan. He set up cameras along the tree line, hidden under brush. He installed motion sensors near the porch. And he began documenting everything: dates, tire tracks, even the pattern of how the papers appeared. If they wanted a war, they'd get one. But this time, it wouldn't be fought with rules or fines. It'd be fought with truth. As the sun went down, David sat on the porch again. The fireflies blinked across the yard. The lake shimmered in the distance, calm and silver under the moonlight. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "They forged the law to take my land. Now it's time I show them what real justice looks like." Then, from the forest, a soft sound broke the silence. The click of a camera. Someone was still watching. They came for my land with paper and lies. But by the time this ends, they'll wish they'd never crossed the line between property and power.